Well, let's start with a conversation about the patriarchs where you start here, and
Hmm.
because I'm curious, sometimes people um, have an understanding of the patriarchs as they're presented in the Old Testament, and I thought it would be interesting here if you explained the Christian understanding of the patriarchs. Just I don't know for how it's represented in the New Testament and then in sacred tradition, so that we could have a little bit of a deeper understanding of this section.
Yeah. Let me see. There's a few components of this. Let me make some notes real fast, make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so to start at the beginning at who or what is a patriarch.
Yeah.
I know people are familiar with the idea of a patriarchy or a matriarchy,
Hmm.
ruled by mother, ruled by father, like from the Latin for pater for patriarch, and then um, archy for like a ruling or uh, levels. So a patriarch is is a system of which the father of the covenant family uh, is the leader, even the priest in a certain sense. Um, so there is this focus on the covenant families throughout the Old Testament. The covenant families are all led by the patriarch with whom God makes his covenant. Um, we the what we have represented on the screen, creation: Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and David. These are your preeminent covenant fathers, your patriarchs, or the Old Testament. Um, Obviously, creation's not a person, but the summation of um, all humanity and all nature. God makes his covenant on the seventh day, the Sheva, with creation, and then with Adam. And as will be seen later in the course, there's always the covenant pair: Adam and Eve, Noah and the ark, Abraham and Sarah. Um, the uh, the covenant, it always stays with the family. If they separate from the family, if a person were to separate from the family or break, it would be a break from the covenant. Like Cain, the blessings of the covenant do not follow to Cain and don't follow to Cain's descendants. The blessings of the covenant follow down the line of patriarchs through Seth. Seth would be the next patriarch, although he's not one of the main patriarchs that we talk about when we try to create this framework of the Old Testament. Um, he then also with Abraham, his two main descendants, Isaac and Ishmael, the covenant the covenant flows through Isaac, but not with Ishmael. When we're given the name of God, when Moses presents the various names of God, the ones he receives at the burning bush,
Hmm.
um, one of the names for God is the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. So those tend to be, if people are asked who are the patriarchs of the Old Testament, they may refer to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
Hmm.
because that's those are the patriarchs named in the name of God Himself. The other names for God, the burning bush being "I am who I am," and the Tetragrammaton. But that's a separate subject. So God makes covenant with Adam. Adam breaks covenant with God.
Hmm.
God makes covenant with Noah. Eventually, some of Noah's descendants are going to break covenant with God. So it has to be remade in three parts with Abraham. It's remade again with Isaac, remade again with Jacob, remade again with Joseph, the um, the the beloved son of Jacob, and then it's broken again at the plains of Moab, the apostasy of the plains of Moab at Mount Sinai. So God makes his covenant again in three parts with Moses. The covenant at Sinai, the Levitical covenant, the Deuteronomic covenant, and then lastly, God makes his covenant with a king, with the kings of Israel, with King David, and that lasts until the Civil War, the first Israeli Civil War, not the modern ones we're more familiar with, but then the northern and southern kingdoms break apart. Um, the northern kingdom breaks from the covenant, and as a result are ransacked and destroyed by the Assyrians, and that's the um, Assyrian exile. But eventually, the same thing happens to the southern kingdom, and we have the Babylonian exile, which basically the return of the exiles brings us to the New Testament period. Hopefully, that wasn't too long of an answer. Uh, definitely make a shorter answer out of that.
That no, that's very helpful. Thank you. If somebody wanted to learn more about this, what would be some good references?
I'd say the best book, bar none, for this would be Scott Hahn's "A Father Who Keeps His Promises."
Okay.
Um, that's a book. I think it's any any level of knowledge. It can be grasped for any, even if you have advanced knowledge in this. I think it's still a great book to read. I personally, when I was teaching high school religion, I taught it. It was the book that we start out our senior year. Have all the seniors read it. Um, it basically is a great primer for the entire Bible.
Mm,
It provides a framework. This this is how I approach the Bible, especially the Old Testament. I use this framework of the patriarchs, that all the Old Testament, more or less, can be told through the lives of these people, of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and David.
mhm,
And if you just kind of get those major miles markers on your timeline, your biblical timeline in your head, you can append all your other knowledge to that.
mhm,
And I think that's what Scott Hahn does a great job of, not only telling that convincing, that wonderful story of salvation history with the book, but giving you that framework um, to to learn the rest of the Bible.